Hello, I'm Adrienne Molenkamp of the League of Women Voters of Athens County. Welcome to this candidate forum for the Democratic primary for the Athens City Council 4th Ward race, which is being hosted by our organization and the City of Athens Government Channel. We hope this will provide you with information for the upcoming election. And the candidates are Christine Fall and Alan Swank. We appreciate these candidates for making the time to participate. If you live in the 4th Ward, please make sure you have a voting plan for this spring's primary. The deadline to register to vote or to update your registration is next week. It is April 5th. And then make a plan for how you're going to vote. If you want to vote by mail, you must submit a written absentee ballot request form. And then those absentee ballots will be mailed to voters starting on April 6th. You can also vote early in person from April 6th through May 3rd at the Board of Elections office. And finally, if you want to vote on Election Day, Tuesday, May 4th, please know that all voting this spring for 4th Ward residents is going to take place at the Board of Elections office on Court Street. This is a temporary change for this election because the 4th Ward voters are the only voters in Athens County who are going to be casting ballots this spring. In addition to this candidate forum, our league publishes a voter guide in which candidates provide written answers to questions. Our voter guide is currently available online at www.vote411.org. A printed version of the guide is going to be available in the coming week in both the Athens Messenger and the Athens News. The League of Women Voters is dedicated to expanding public awareness about government issues and encouraging active participation in government. The League does not support or oppose political parties or candidates. Despite our name, the League is not for women only, and we welcome participation and support from all people. Please visit us online at athensleagueofwomenvoters.org to learn more about our league, to become a member, or to make a donation. If you appreciate our candidate forums and voter guides, please consider making a donation to help support all our work in Athens County. Thank you for joining this evening, and now I'll turn it over to Tanya Conrath, who is our moderator for tonight's forum.
Thanks, Adrienne. Welcome to this candidates forum. I will begin by explaining the forum procedures, which each candidate has agreed to in advance. Tonight's forum will include 1, an opening statement from each candidate, 2, a question from each of the media representatives present, 3, questions from the public that have been submitted in advance, and finally, a closing statement from each candidate. Candidates will have 3 minutes for their opening statement, 2 minutes for their closing statement, and 1.5 minutes to answer each question. There will be no rebuttals. The order for answering questions will rotate, and I will indicate who will speak first. The candidates can see our timekeeper, who will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining, 10 seconds remaining, and when their time has expired. If a candidate continues speaking past their time, I will say thank you and move on to the next candidate. All of the questions from the public were received ahead of time through the email address included in our advertising, and then they were reviewed by a league panel. The panel removed any questions that 1, could not be answered by both candidates, 2, were statements rather than questions, or 3, were duplicative of a previous question. I will ask as many questions as time allows, striving to cover a variety of topics before the forum ends tonight at 8:30. The order in which our candidates will speak has already been determined, and we will begin now with an opening statement from Chris. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you. And I want to say thank you to the League, of course, and to the government channel for broadcasting this. And I want to say thank you to Alan, because right now, everybody knows how fragile our democracy can really be. And it is use it or lose it. And so I'm really excited that people are involved and listening to issues and taking on that responsibility of being a participatory democracy. Thank you. when thinking about what I was going to say, I kind of looked back on some of the things that I thought, well, that kind of made an impression, or it kind of made an impact. And so I thought that it would be interesting to see what a common thread through all those were. When I first started kind of engaging with the city was with NENA, the Near East Neighborhood Association. They wanted to have traffic calming. So we asked Andy Stone, and we put together a grant for the Safe Routes to School program. We got it funded, and not only did we get it funded, they said, we'd like to come to Athens and make a plan for you so you can apply for the grant for the next 6 years. That was a lot of money coming into Athens. So I think that that probably has a lot of impact, especially for walkability to schools. And then there's the comprehensive plan. The first one that had a lot of recommendations and stuff, and people say, plans, eh. But out of that first comprehensive plan, the Sustainability Commission, the Environment Sustainability Commission, came out of. They produced a sustainability plan for the city of Athens. The Historic Commission came out. They've been busy working with the development people to identify historic buildings so that we can make use them for development purposes in doing something like a redevelopment district. So those sort of things came out of the comprehensive plan. And then you go through, and some of the things were being talked about that already were in the city, but we wanted to improve them, like the wellhead protection. So it's all these, but it's not only the planning, which I'm partial to, being a planner person. It's the people. It's the people that I worked with at each individual step. And that's what makes me want to continue working with the people that make Athens what it is. The people who would spend their time wanting to do traffic calming in their neighborhood. The people who came forward with changes to make city council processes even more equitable and fair. And that's why I want to continue working, is with the people. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Alan, your turn for an opening statement. Alan, I believe you're muted. Let's start his time again.
First technology glitch of the evening. Hello, my name's Alan Swank. Thank you, Tanya, for that introduction. And like Chris, I would like to thank several groups of people. First of all, the League of Women Voters. As a candidate for office, you kind of think you show up, we talk to the people, but there's a lot of work that the League had to put in to put this together. This started about 2 months ago, and I truly, truly appreciate their efforts. I'd also like to thank Councilperson Fall for participating in this today. For those of you who've been paying attention in Athens County and the state of Ohio over the last 2 years, there's some incumbent candidates that chose to dodge these forums, and there was no conversation about the issues. So I do truly thank her for being a part of this. I'd like to thank all the people who've supported my campaign so far, either by placing yard signs, sending in contributions, or just talking to their neighbors about my candidacy, especially my campaign chairperson, John Barrington. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my wife and family. Anyone running for public office for a leadership position has to engage the support of their family, and they have been very, very, very supportive through this so far. But most importantly, the group that needs to be thanked are viewers at home tonight and viewers who will be watching this on tape. It's because, after all, as a council person, we are elected to listen and to represent you. And I hope by the end of the evening, you'll have a better idea of who I am and some of the things that I feel are important. So who am I? We came to Athens from Akron 42 years ago. Supposed to be 1 year of graduate school at Ohio University. And as with so many people, 1 turned to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 25. And here we are 42 years later with 2 children and 3 grandchildren who attend East Elementary. I was a former teacher and volleyball coach at Athens High School, and also coached track. My professional career after teaching moved into the yearbook business. And for 23 years, I was an independent small businessman a yearbook representative, working with schools not only in Athens, but throughout southeastern Ohio. In 2006, I had the opportunity to move into upper level management and became the regional vice president of sales for Taylor Publishing Company. And at one time or another was responsible for an area from Maine to Minnesota to Memphis, Tennessee to Wilmington, North Carolina. Not all at one time, but got to see a lot of the country and got to see a lot of great towns like Athens. Currently, I'm the chair of the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Committee Advisory Board for the city. I'm the vice president of FINA, and I'm currently working on a neighborhood pilot program to put streetlights in mid-block on the Far East Side. This has been funded by a grant, which we're very excited about. But we have about an hour and a half tonight. You'll have plenty of time to ask questions and to hear all about both candidates. Thank you again for attending and being a part of this important program.
Thanks, Alan. Now we move to the question and answer portion of the forum. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. And candidates, as I told you, should you need me to repeat a question, I'm happy to do that. Let's begin now with a question from our media representative. Tonight we have Cole Behrens, a reporter for the Athens Messenger, with us to ask the first question. And make sure you unmute yourself, Cole.
Should I ask the question?
Please go ahead.
So my question is, obviously, looking at the university's enrollment, it's declining, and, there's not necessarily an end to that decline in sight. And with that, there will be, a decrease in sales tax revenue and a decrease in transient guest tax revenue, and et cetera. So, if elected, what is it that what steps do you think you would take as city council members to bridge that gap of, a tax, just a tax gap in, if elected?
Thanks, Cole. Alan, you're the first to answer.
Cole, that's very similar to something that you and I talked about when we did the interview for the Athens News. And you are absolutely correct. In 2016, there were 18,200 undergraduate students on the Athens campus. OU itself is projecting that in 2024, that number will decrease to 12,600. That's a 31% decrease. Not only are we going to have a decrease in revenue, but we're going to have a decrease in occupied housing. This might be a great opportunity for Athens, perhaps convert some of those rental properties further away from campus, yet still in the city, into single-family homes. But right now, we are essentially a company town, and that company is Ohio University. We need to diversify. And one way we can diversify is to create an environment where businesses are not reluctant to come to Athens, but are overjoyed to come here. Unfortunately, through the years, at least the 42 years I've been here, we've had somewhat of a reputation as a city of being business unfriendly. Some of that has to do with ordinances and code modifications that have been passed by our elected representatives. We need to look at that code and make sure that it is business friendly, but the key word is responsible business friendly. And if we do that, we can diversify our economy and offset some of the loss we're seeing and the decline of enrollment and employment at Ohio University.
Thank you, Alan. Chris, and you will need to unmute.
Thank you. I think that one needs to look at doing things right now, as in last year and the year before, because these sort of trends tend to take a long time to go through. I think it's not only coupled with the university decline, but there's going to be a change in how people are going to be working. There's going to be a change in how far people are willing to telecommute and those sort of things. And so we need to be able to be on the ground, ready to capture those sort of people coming who are here to a certain degree. And then we also need to identify partners in the city and outside of the city to help solve the problems that have been identified as why people are reluctant to open a business here, or why people are reluctant to move a business here. And that has a lot to do with our housing stock. And I think that making sure that students are savvy and doing the different tools that the city has been using to redevelop certain areas into different upscale sort of housing that people want to live in now. That's not necessarily all student, but mixed, is something that we should continue doing in the future to address the housing issue, which I think is one of the biggest concerns that a lot of people have. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you again to the Athens Messenger for participating tonight. Our second question begins our public questions that were submitted. And Chris, you'll be the first to answer this. What do you believe a ward representative should do for their constituents and for the whole city of Athens?
Well, because our city is so small in a lot of ways, the ward is the city and the city is the ward in a lot of ways. I think that my conduit is to people across the spectrum, but especially for people who may not be able to advocate very well for themselves, to represent their voice on council. And there are a lot of people in the community who either don't have time because they work too much or something. And that's one thing that I find with Zoom is that we have much more of a cross-section of people who are willing to come and talk at council or ask questions, which I think is a democratization of what we need to do with the constituents and of the city. I've been working with constituents to look at doing, increasing water runoff retention, working with city to voice their concerns about the farmers market. Also, people have to remember that our new comprehensive plan has hundreds of hours of people talking. And a lot of that discussion came out from the FINAs and the NINAs and the West Side neighborhood associations and such. And so moving forward with a lot of the comprehensive plan and doing the work of the people right there is something that is definitely listening to the constituents in the city. Thank you.
Alan, same question.
Many people don't understand the setup of city council in the city of Athens. We have 4 wards. The first ward, or ward number 1, is primarily the west side. Ward number 2 is the south side. Ward number 3 would be that area in town on the Village Bakery side of East State Street. And the 4th ward would be the Near East side, the Far East side, and part of the South Green. Each of those wards has a representative who is charged first with listening to and, more importantly, engaging with his or her constituents. We then have 3 at-large members that represent the entire city. But when it comes time to vote on things, every representative, whether they're a ward representative or an at-large representative, is one of 7 votes and is voting on the welfare of the city, whether it be something such as a speed limit or something that's been pointed out in the comprehensive plan. I'll give you an example. Not only do we engage, but we need to follow up. While I was campaigning door to door on Morris Avenue the other day, a gentleman called to my attention the problems on the lower half of Morris Avenue with speed because of the Stimson Avenue project. Well, it becomes incumbent upon a council member to know who to call to get the problem addressed, and then to get back to that constituent in a timely manner. I have a feeling we'll be covering this issue in a little more detail as we go throughout the forum this evening.
Thank you, Alan. And it was my fault. I didn't realize that we also had the Athens News had joined us. So please, let's go back to the media and have a question from the Athens News editor, Sydney Dawson.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me to start. And thank you for setting aside time for media to ask questions. I really just have one question. So local activists and current council member Katsas have argued that Athens City Council lacks diversity. Do you agree or disagree with this? Why or why not?
Alan, you'll be the first to answer. Sorry. Yeah.
This is one of the odd questions, odd number, not odd in character, so I guess this is mine. Sydney, that's a great question, and a lot depends on how you or what you're calling diversity. If we're talking about racial diversity, absolutely, it's a very, very white council, and if I'm elected, it will be just as white. But if you're talking about philosophy and political beliefs and thoughts, I kind of agree with Councilman Katsas. One thing that I feel is lacking on council right now, which I hope to bring, is a sense of fiscal responsibility and conservatism. I'll give you a couple examples. We have recently agreed to some contracts that should have been renegotiated. The amount of increase in these contracts far outstrips the rate of inflation. I'll give you an example. Our water and sewer rates. In the last 5 years, our water and sewer rates have gone up 35% and 78% respectively, where according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the rate of inflation over those 5 years is 10.41%. Yes, we need safe drinking water and we need good sewage, but those increases are way out of line, and I'll bring that fiscal responsibility to council.
Thank you. Chris, same question. And I think you need to unmute.
There we go. Actually, I had talked with Cole about this, and something that one needs to remember is that council is considered, quarter time, and so we get a stipend, and so that right there keeps a certain number of people not being able to run because there's not enough time for them to be able to make enough money to do a half-time job or something. So there's issues there because that does reduce the number of possible students or people who are young professionals who've come in. And city council is not the only one. Lots of boards have this problem too. So I think looking and professionalizing some of the stuff that the city council has to offer future people, it is not a full-time job. It can be if you want, but it's definitely a lot more than a quarter-time job. And then I think that it would help for people to understand where they would fit in with all the stuff that's going on around the city and get that in kind of participatory sort of thing going on. And I would like to see more people kind of graduate up out of our committees to come into it because they know what's going on in the background, but they would bring a really different view because they're more administrative and looking at it from a committee view. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, thanks to our media representatives for coming tonight. Next question, Chris, you'll answer first. Why do you want to serve on city council?
Well, one thing is, it suits me very well. My experience with working with people as a planner and teaching people how to do planning. And I'm a full person who loves to dive into problems, do the research, reach out to people who know things and who can provide different types of point of view, and synthesizing it together and coming together with a solution to the problem that was before us. And that for me is really powerful. And it's especially powerful when it's people who are new to having their voice heard and such. And there's a lot of that happens, especially when you take the time to do a lot of the public meetings and things that the city does through all our planning processes. And that's why it's so powerful to do these planning processes. So I think when you look at the stuff that's been done over the last few years, we've really come a long way with being able to provide safe drinking water, but also providing things and starting to redevelop and go forward with some of the other challenges that have been shown by COVID and some of the other challenges that have been placed on top of us by that. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges, and I want to help find the solutions that will help all of the constituents that I have and everybody in Athens. So thank you.
Thank you. Alan, same question. You're going to have to unmute. You're going to have, yeah.
Yeah, when I was knocking on doors over the weekend, talking with the voters, there's several things I kept hearing over and over and over again, and on a wide variety of issues. What these people wanted to know was this: what's going on? Why aren't they being told? And how would I handle these issues if elected? Their message was clear. They expect their ward representative to be visible, to be accessible, to get them involved in the process in the beginning, not when the train has already left the station. Communication, it's asking, and it's not asking just people who agree with you, but asking people who may not agree with you. It needs to be a conversation. I like to get things done. I really like to get things done. I'll give you a perfect example. For many, many years, the people in Athens felt that if you had one of those lighted signs like we have in front of the community center, you couldn't change the message on it. They said that's what code said. It became an urban myth, an urban legend. Well, the code doesn't say that. And now at the community center, what we do is we change that sign on a very, very regular basis, promoting the programs for the people in the community. It took me 8 months to get that done, but we were able to make that change, and it has been very beneficial to share information about what's happening in arts, parks, and recreation in Athens.
Thank you. Next question, and Alan, you'll be the first to answer. What are your top 2 priorities for the city, and what are your plans to address them?
Tanya, it's not so much about my priorities, because I would be a representative of the people, but it's what are the priorities of our citizens, our constituents. One of the things I've heard from many, 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 many people is that we need to provide affordable, quality housing for all, and in particular, some of our senior citizens. I used to coach volleyball at Athens High School. And most of those young women are now in their 40s, some approaching 50. And I've watched many of their parents who I used to see sitting in the stands cheering on their daughters move out of Athens, away from their children and grandchildren, because they could not find affordable, quality housing. The second thing that I'm hearing, and I agree with what they've said, the second thing that I'm hearing from a lot of people is that we need to work very, very hard on the combined issues of racial equity and social justice. We're going to come back to that in a little bit, but everybody in this town needs to be able to benefit from the opportunities that this town affords them, regardless of color, creed, sexual orientation, or any other protected category. Those would probably be 2 of my bigger issues. But again, it's what the constituents want that we are obligated to work on.
Chris.
Great, thank you. My number 1 plan right now to go forward with our comprehensive plan that was adopted by City Council earlier this year, last year, and move forward with a comprehensive implementation committee. And we'll be putting that together so that we go through the comprehensive plan priorities for all the different commissions and everything, figure out how we'll get their input for what the plan says and what they see as the priorities right now, and do that across for each individual ward representative, make it so that they can do it in their ward, and so that it's very individualized through the different wards and the city as a whole. And that's important because a plan is only as good as what you do with it. And this is a way of really starting and getting the conversation going again after COVID, which I think is going to be one of our big challenges is getting those conversations going. Second one is looking at housing, but a lot of the other issues that we have going forward with COVID, the relief plan, the American Rescue Plan. And there's a lot of opportunities in there with the money that will be coming directly to the city to really identify the issues such as housing, broadband, and recreational opportunities that people want and that will attract people to Athens. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, you'll be the first to answer this next question. What special skills or attributes do you possess that would benefit the city?
Let's see. I think I come with a background of being able to bring people together. That's what planners, one of the things that we're taught when going through graduate school. Being able to be the conduit between policy and things that are all ABC, like what I did with council last night and do a presentation, to bring it so that people feel that they have a stake in it and that they have a voice in what's going on with many things across the city. And an example of that would be the pool discussion wasn't going in a good, healthy discussionary way going forward when people were rather angry because they weren't heard. And partly that was because the consultants that were hired did not know Athens very well. Well, I thought that maybe it was people needed to be heard again. So we opened up the discussion again for people to come in, council, and really talk about it. And we all came to a really good conclusion. And now we have the school pool, the city pool, and people love it. And I think that they'll be excited because I think it's going to be open. So thank you.
Alan, what special skills or attributes do you possess that would benefit the city?
I think I have a unique ability, or maybe just an innate talent to see issues. I live over on Townsend, which is off of East State Street by Don Wood. And traffic has been a problem on this side of town for many, many, many years. In fact, according to the city engineer, about 30,000 cars a day travel down East State Street. And unfortunately, many of them go very, very fast. We have a bunch of signs over here in front of businesses. So several years ago, came up with an idea of maybe visually getting people's attention to slow down traffic. And I went to each and every one of those businesses that has a sign and asked them to put up the following message: keep our kids alive, please drive 25. It's anecdotal, but for a short period of time, we saw people slowing down. I think the second attribute that would help me is my ability to communicate. I can talk to anybody at any time about anything, but communicating is also listening. And I like to hear what people say. And in the last week and a half, I've heard a lot of things that they think can be done in the city, one of which is to have some change. But the other thing would be my wide experience. I mentioned how far I traveled and how many places I saw. Not that any of those places are any better than Athens, but they sure showed me a lot of opportunities. No need to reinvent the wheel on everything. We can borrow and modify as we continue to make Athens grow. Thank you.
Alan, this next question, you'll be the first to respond. The Fourth Ward includes a variety of constituents, including homeowners, renters, students, large and small businesses, etc. How would you balance representing the needs of all these constituents?
Everybody gets equal treatment. Everybody gets equal treatment. We have laws and codes that govern our behavior, whether we're a resident or a business. We have laws that regulate how high our grass can be, 8 inches. We have laws that regulate how much noise we can make and how late we can make that noise, whether we're a resident or a business. Give an example of something I did that brought the two together. The Polaris store down on Townsend would unload their vehicles and run them, test drive them up Townsend at a rather high rate of speed. People complained. Well, just so happens I know one of the car salesmen at Donwood, and I went down to see him. Who do I need to speak with? And he told me, and I went and spoke with the manager that he had told me to speak with, and we worked out a solution. They found some space over on their property where they could unload their Polaris vehicles, race them as quickly and as fast as they wanted to, endangered nobody, and they're still selling lots of vehicles, and the neighbors are very, very happy. I'm a big proponent of picking up the phone or going to see somebody face to face when an issue arises or a problem needs solved. And that's how I would continue to balance business and individual resident property rights on the east side.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you. I think that for many people, even though they may be students or homeowners, sometimes they're both, or renters and business owners, because they could be both, is that there are certain things that everybody should demand from their city. Clean water, sewage that's taken care of, garbage, health and safety issues, those sort of things. And so you do the things that are boring, but needed, like making sure the sewage plant has enough capacity to be able to go forward. Those sort of things, which are seem to be very mundane, impact everybody across the city. And when we don't have water, people, doesn't matter whether you're a renter or a homeowner, you get impacted. I think also you have to identify the things that do make them a little bit different. The students had different issues than what over on FINA had different issues. And so you have to listen to them and put together solutions to their issues. And I've worked with students doing such things as tow prices and keeping tow yards in Athens. And then I worked with other people who were concerned about traffic calming on Wallace and Morris. And so you have to look at that in that sort of way. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris, you'll be the first to answer this next question. How would you work to learn the needs of all residents of Athens, not just those in your ward?
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record. We went through 2 years of intensive planning preparation with our comprehensive plan, 3 years, really, and then the COVID year. And so that has just hundreds of contact of city people, people in the region, people who use public transit, people who do this, neighborhoods, businesses, and all those sort of people. If we don't take all that information that they came at, 9 to stay until 9 o'clock at the community center to listen and to help, then we would be selling them short. And that we don't need to reproduce because a lot of it's there. And a lot of the issues that have been identified through this process, the city is already actually working on, such as the affordable housing, universal design housing, and moderate income. We've been working on that because that was seen over and over by many, many people in the city, in my ward, as a real priority to do. We didn't wait for it. We started doing it. So thank you.
Alan.
Tanya, would you be so kind as to repeat that question again?
I sure will. How would you work to learn the needs of all residents of Athens, not just those in your ward?
Okay, thank you. We've heard a lot tonight about this comprehensive plan, and a plan is important, but that plan is full of issues that neighbors did not agree with. See, most people don't engage. You hear from a select few. Let me give you a couple examples of the things in that comprehensive plan that the neighbors do not want. Come over on the far east side of Dalton. Dalton runs parallel to East State Street. At the corner of Dalton and Townsend, there is in the comprehensive plan a plan for a mini roundabout at a three-way stop. The corner of Avon and Dalton, a plan for a mini roundabout with a four-way stop already. There's also a plan to put a median strip on Grand Park Boulevard. Well, if you live on the east side of Grand Park Boulevard and you want to go to East State Street, you would have to come out of your driveway, go north, and turn around and come back south. How do we know what people want? We can't count on them coming to us. We need to go to them. And I plan to do the following: to have quarterly town halls, monthly meet and greets, meet and listen at the library and community center. I plan to attend neighborhood association meetings, using social media, reach a lot of people. And right now I'm currently conducting a series of street halls via Zoom. In fact, the first one will be tomorrow night with those on the Near East Side. We need to go to the people, not expect them to come to us.
Thank you. Next question, Alan, this will go to you first. Should City Council make any changes to the way it responds to the needs of underrepresented residents?
Good question. We can't make people do things, but we need to remove impediments that prevent them from doing things. When we were kids growing up, all of us, nobody wanted to go to the principal's office. You'd do anything that you possibly could to avoid that. It was an unpleasant experience. Unfortunately, I'm afraid some of our citizens feel the same way about approaching elected officials and appointed officials. It's almost like going to the principal's office. We need to make everybody, regardless of their situation, feel comfortable. And again, this is a matter of engaging people. We all know what the needs of this town are. How do we meet those needs? By helping everybody, regardless of their position, feel that they're welcome. You know, years ago, we had things such as the welcome wagon and all of that. I'm not sure we bring that back. Some of those things were probably a little bit inappropriate. But during this time of COVID, I've noticed something. People are out and about. They're walking their dogs. They're walking everywhere. They're talking. A sense of neighborliness has returned to our town. I'm hoping when COVID is over, people don't go back into their houses and forget what happened during this time of pandemic. We found out a little bit about who our neighbors are and really what they're all about.
Thank you. Chris.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Should City Council make any changes to the way it responds to the needs of underrepresented residents?
Thank you. Well, I think one opportunity that might come up, I'm not sure because we don't know what the census is going to say, but there might be a change in Athens where if we hit a certain population number that we go from being a 7 to a 9 board. And that would be meaning redrawing the districts and the wards and those sort of things. So that's you know, we always want to be representative, and we do have a lot of different people. Making the city council, you know, easier to access, to run, you know, running for city council is something that I think we can help other people, because trying to run for an office is really difficult. And I think that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party can help in those ways, because you can go and help train people to be going into volunteer work or, you know, volunteering for the city. There are ways for people to get involved right now, and we do a lot of outreach, and that's through our commissions and our boards and everything. And those have been really making those very accessible, and we do have a good cross-section of people in those positions, and working with the students. And I've had a work-study student working for me for the last 2 years, and it's really interesting because he's a conduit to a lot of what goes on campus, and that's also important. So, thank you.
Next question, Chris, we'll start with you. And I think this also brings up the decrease in enrollment for OU that Cole was mentioning, but I think this has a little bit of a different flavor to it. The questioner writes, with OU enrollment plummeting, we have a unique opportunity as the need for off-campus housing decreases for the first time in recent history. What opportunities do you see in this situation for the city?
Thank you. It's something that we've been working on a lot with the mayor. The mayor has really taken a lot of leadership on this. It's easy to say, oh, well, we'll just convert the houses. You know, we started a discussion with the university several years ago, looking at opportunities in changing some of the outer ring of houses to go into homeowner occupied. And that's something that's in the housing plan that the university and the city put together. Then that also is used in our housing plan that this council adopted. Those are some of the opportunities for mixed residential housing, have studios, have space for small businesses and those sort of things. And those tools are just starting to come forward in council. We've just approved the last one, and doing some of the development with the private developer that's doing the 80 units of affordable low income housing out on Artemis, on our Lurid Road, which we annexed into the city. And then we're working with a developer to see if we can get some universal design complex being built. So thank you.
Thank you. And for those of you watching live, I think we lost Chris's sound for a little bit, but when this is replayed, that should not be an issue. So we apologize for that. Alan, same question. And you need to unmute.
I quoted some figures earlier about OU's decline in enrollment, and the projection is 31%, and that is significant. When I was growing up as a kid, and many people watching at home, we shared a bedroom with a brother or sister. We had bigger families, larger families. Today, many of the students coming to OU and all colleges across the country have grown up in an environment where they had their own bedroom and in some cases their own bathroom. And what they're looking for are more modern amenities, hence the big developments that ring the town, which leaves us in a precarious position. With 31% fewer students here, where are the kids going to want to live? Well, in those areas that ring the city, the big apartment complexes. Problem is, anyone who has purchased a home in the last 10 years as a rental property in Athens, what used to be traditional single family homes, probably paid more for that house than it's going to be worth in the next 2 to 4 years. What happens to those houses? We can't have them sit vacant. When Terry and I bought our first house here in Athens, Ohio had an issue 1 money available. For a mere 5% down, you could buy a house. People stood in line at the bank to get those loans. Perhaps the city can work with financial lenders or the state to maybe develop a similar program so that those houses that become vacant become affordable so that people can buy them and still have money to fix them up. That's just one idea, but it's going to take lots of people to figure that out.
Thank you. Next question, Alan, when we'll be beginning with you. And this is a lengthy question, so give me a minute to read through it here. Many Ohio cities have outlawed housing discrimination against Section 8 tenants by adding a source of income to the list of protected classes within their local fair housing ordinances. The Athens Fair Housing Ordinance already goes above and beyond state fair housing law by protecting gay and transgender tenants from discrimination. If elected, will you push to add source of income to the list of classes that are protected from housing discrimination in Athens?
Absolutely. Whether you're getting your income from Section 8 subsidies, from a rich uncle in Utah, or out of your bank account at the Hocking Valley Bank, it should not matter as long as you have the money to pay the rent. Of course, that doesn't mean you can rent any place you want just because you have the money. Everybody should still be expected to deal with the credit check, references, and all of that. My daughter has a rental property. She's had no problem renting it. She's gotten great tenants, but there's a process you go through. That said, we need to make sure that individuals who are renting properties don't use things such as credit checks and references in a way that prevents legitimate renters from being able to rent a property. But to answer the question directly, source of income should not matter. It should not matter at all. But we have a dearth of affordable quality housing for our senior citizens. And similarly, we have a dearth of affordable, and I'll put emphasis on quality housing for those who may not have a great deal of money.
Thank you. Chris, same question.
Great. Well, first, I would have to see whether the state actually preempts those sort of things, because the state does try to preempt a lot of the more progressive things that cities have been trying to do, especially over the last couple of years. Second, I think that what you need to look at and what the city is embarking on over the last year is the implicit bias that even those sort of terms connote. When we talk about credit reports and those sort of things, well, not everybody has a credit card because they're lower income, or some of those other things, which is a lot harder because there's no banks in certain types of areas. They don't have a normal banking account. So we have to look at that institutional bias and institutional racism when we're requiring certain things in our code. And that's something that we have to go through every time. And we're looking at old code doing it. And so I would look at it from that point of view and making sure all of the language in those sections of code, like Steve, the mayor, has been doing, to look at it for institutional racism and biases, and then go forward with what makes the most sense for making sure equity and justice across everybody in Athens. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And Chris, will stay with you for this next question. Also related to housing. What specific proposals or initiatives would you either put forth or support to bolster affordable housing for families and individuals?
Great. Well, I think some of the tools I've been talking about being used aggressively, and I think that the administration has shown that pretty well. See how those work forward. I think that we need to look at a lot of the zoning code and work with the Planning Commission to identify those things that are once again, that institutional limits of being able to either infill or build a duplex or those sort of things, because those sort of code requirements make those types of alternative housings difficult to go and infill in, like R1. R1 is a somewhat exclusionary zone, and so we need to identify ways to make sure that there's a cross-section of different types of housing and a diversity of income types and stuff, especially where some of our most developable land is, and also in areas that maybe can be redeveloped into a lot nicer areas for the whole city and such. And so I would work with the administration definitely and go forward with a lot of the different tools that we've been talking about. So thank you.
Alan, same question.
First of all, the so-called affordable housing in the new area at University Estates is hardly what I would call affordable housing. $240,000. Under normal lending conditions, an individual would need to come up with 20% down to buy one of those properties, which is $48,000 plus fees. Now, they might be able to work with the bank and get that reduced, but still, $48,000 for what is basically entry-level affordable housing. You need a credit score of at least 640, and you can't use more than 31% of your gross income for your housing, taxes, and insurance. So what does that mean? You'd have a mortgage of $192,000, taxes of $4,000, and insurance of $1,000. $4,300 a month, or $51,000 a year. That's a lot of numbers, but remember these two. $51,000 a year gross household income when a teacher, a beginning teacher in any of the 5 school districts in Athens County makes $10,000 less than that. It's not affordable. It's not affordable. The things that we're talking about in the city, we have to be very, very careful if we're going to start increasing density. And that is, what effect is that going to have on the property values of existing homes? It's not as simple as putting granny apartments or extra. I'll finish later. Thank you.
Thank you for honoring the time limit, Alan. We appreciate that. We'll go to our next question, and Alan, you will be the first to respond. And the question is, in response to nationwide protests against racism and policing, last June, Athens City Council unanimously passed a resolution which, in part, called for a review and revision of city policing with racial equity in mind. 9 months later, no such review or revision has occurred. If elected, how will you get the city to fulfill its broken promise? Alan?
That question is actually my answer to what happened. June 22nd of last year, council unanimously passed a resolution. Unanimously passed a resolution. Are we talking about good, or are we doing good? 9 months later, the good has not been done. I find that embarrassing that our elected officials have let this slide. What's even more embarrassing is part of that was to review the contract for our police department. I look at police and fire as an insurance policy. You want to get the best policy that you can afford so that in the event you need to use them, they are there. In December of 2019, we had a chimney fire. My neighbors saw it, called 911. And within 2 minutes, 2 Athens police officers were in front of our house. Why so quickly? They were headed down East State Street to go to Walmart to deal with a shoplifting incident. They felt, rightfully so, that a fire was a lot more important. They got here, they cleared us out, and everything was fine. Yes, we need police and fire, but we need to look at what we promised we're going to do in a timely manner. And 9 months is way, way, way too long.
Chris, same question.
Thank you. When a lot of the Black Lives Matter horrible things that happen, I didn't know enough about what was going on. I needed to educate myself. And going forward for myself, going and doing the hard work of looking at what was going on, I didn't know enough about our police department. So my son and I sat there and we wrote a 20 question FAQ of what he thinks people would want to know and what I needed to know. And that was done. The police chief did it. I put it out there as public information, and it just kind of sat there. And unfortunately, it would probably help a lot of people understand where the police the areas of the police department that has the most potential for having problems are also those that are ones that they have pulled back from having that potential. The city does not do no-knock warrants. They do not have the training for it. They don't do it. I didn't know that until I asked that question. There were many of it, and before you go and do policy changes, you need to know what's going on. And not everything gets talked about when we're doing stuff because it's boring. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris, you'll be the first to answer the next question. Given current economic conditions, what are 2 actions you would promote to increase city revenue or decrease city expenditures in order to balance the city budget?
Well, for the past year with COVID, one of the things that we did was soft hiring freeze. So that certainly did help. Now that we're coming out the other side and that there's American Rescue Package money and stuff, that will definitely help Athens. Making sure that that money is used in a way that is, just, and make sure that people who are really struggling have an opportunity to access the programs and stuff that this money will help us do. I think that what I would want to do is to expand something like broadband. We do not have good broadband. If we became a gig city, we would have people coming down here and opening businesses and stuff. Broadband is a huge problem as we see everybody fading in and out in this forum. And then there's other ways that we can reduce budget. However, going forward, we also have to balance that with having enough personnel because we have been on a soft hiring freeze and we are understaffed in some areas. That will be changing going forward with increased revenue and some of the rescue money. So thank you.
Thank you. Alan.
Earlier asked about 2 of my priorities. I will add a third, and that is fiscal responsibility. I think at this point in time, it would be very, very difficult to talk about increasing revenue. It's virtually impossible. So that leaves us an opportunity. It leaves us with the charge of reducing expenses. First thing we need to do is start negotiating decent contracts instead of giving money away. Let me give you a perfect example. In 2015, the contract for our solid waste contract was for $992,000. The contract for this year is $1,543,000 or $1,543,000. From 2015 to 2020, that's an increase of 55.5%. Rate of inflation during that time, 8.57%. We should have renegotiated that contract. And if I'm elected, we will look very, very closely at every contract long before it comes to council for passage under an emergency clause or a suspension of the rules. That was just irresponsible. Should have never happened. We need to start looking at our contracts. We're looking at probably coming up $20,000 short this year alone in the composting program. And hopefully there'll be a question here about that. We need, time's up again. Thank you very much.
So much to say. And there's my dog chiming in as well. Alan, we're going to stick with you. Let me see if I can get my dog to be quiet. Okay. This was just actually mentioned by Chris a moment ago, and this is somewhat of a follow-up. What are some things that you think the city should do with the money from the American Rescue Plan?
That's temporary money. Our public school systems are looking at the same thing. Right now, they have more money than they can spend. But I think our local superintendent is right in this. to create new programs with that money would be foolish, because who knows in a year, 2 or 3, when that money runs out and you have a program in place, if you'll have the revenue to continue it. If you don't, what are you forced to do? Take away services that people are used to and eliminate people's jobs. What are we short on right now? We got beat up in the parking garage. We got beat up on the parking meters. We got killed in city recreation. We couldn't open the pool. What I would use that money for right now is to restore those services that we've had in the past that we know for a fact we are going to continue in the future, as opposed to creating new jobs. But I would create a couple of jobs. That said, when we passed our last income tax, it was the understanding of the citizens of Athens that we would enhance our safety service departments. We're down a couple of firefighters, and in the next 18 months, we have 9 firefighters that are eligible to retire. We need to staff that department properly. That's what I would do with that money.
Thank you. Chris?
Great, thank you. I think there's some things that should be understood about the American Rescue Plan. It will be over 2 years. We'll get something like 4.4 million something, and that will be over 2 years. There will be not as many strings attached to it as the CARES Act, but it is, meant for cities to become whole. The city has had a soft hiring freeze last year because of COVID. We did not open the pool because of COVID. The parking garage had lower revenue because of COVID, and we understand that. And so going forward, it makes sense to make certain programs whole, because they certainly do need it. Identifying that certain programs will probably come right back up, like the parking garage is getting more and more use. But also finding those opportunities to invest that money so it will create follow-on jobs. And that is like broadband, making sure that we have the end mile of broadband so that businesses can come into our area and have a gig. Right now that's not even possible. We have a research institution and our internet really is sad. And so identifying those programs where it may be capital expenses, putting in fiber when we need to, we're doing that when we do street repairs and stuff. It may be coming in and partnering with a private entity, but using that to leverage other jobs and other income that will then be invested into Athens. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, this piggybacks a little bit off that last question and maybe some of what you were already answering. What ideas do you have for the city to diversify its economy?
I think that broadband is huge. The city is working with Ohio Health and becoming more and more of a health center for the region. And I think when people talk about healthcare, they talk about it from an end user point of view. But healthcare is a way for a lot of, especially young women, to lift themselves out of poverty because they have the ability to go to a junior college or a technical school and get jobs like, health hygienics and those sort of things. And so that sort of investment's really important because it helps diversify the people who are able to come in and get jobs, and also being able to support the environment that's required for those diversifications, having the right infrastructure, having up-to-date broadband, having recreational and outdoor services really available so that people feel comfortable coming to Athens, making sure that we have access for beginners, new businesses, people of color to come in and do new businesses. And I think we've done some of that with food vending and stuff. We should build on that. And using some of that money is appropriate use for those sort of things. Well, last thing, the money cannot be taken away by the state or the feds. It's dedicated money for Athens. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Alan, same question. What ideas do you have for the city to diversify its economy?
I would agree wholeheartedly with Chris on the broadband issue. If anything, COVID has taught us that you don't need to live in San Diego to, quote, work in San Diego. I am currently the new director of alumni engagement and annual giving for Muskingum University, my alma mater. I'm able to do it from here in Athens, going to New Concord twice a month to function in this job. You no longer need to live in some of the very, very high-priced areas such as New York City, suburban Washington, D.C., San Diego, California, and work for a company here in Athens. And work for a company in San Diego. You can work from Athens. You can work from Aspen, Colorado. Broadband is essential, and I agree with Chris on that 100%. But to diversify the economy, I think we can look at 3 areas. There are more than that, but 3 in particular. One would be outdoor pursuits. I look at the little town of Damascus, Virginia, and the millions and millions that they bring in because of their well-developed outdoor pursuit opportunities. Healthcare is huge. As we grow older, we're going to need more of it. And finally, manufacturing. Let's attract some companies such as Sterling Ultra Cold or the reemergence of Athens Tire and Mold, which is now owned and operated by Athens high school graduates, a homegrown business that's been here forever, fell into disrepair, and is being brought back.
Thank you. These next 3 questions all relate in one way or another to the environment. And so I'll ask you these 3 specific questions one at a time. Alan, this first one, you'll be the first to respond. How can the city reduce its carbon footprint to help decrease global warming? And yeah, I think you're muted.
So a minute and a half on each, or is this going to be rapid fire?
Nope, these are 3 separate questions. Actually, I just wanted to prepare you that this next set is about the environment.
Okay, if you could, just real quickly, that first question.
Absolutely. This is about the carbon footprint. So it says, how can the city reduce its carbon footprint to help decrease global warming?
Two ideas. Currently, we are bringing in between $45,000 and $50,000 a year in fare box revenue on our public transit system, the buses, between $45,000 and $50,000. It only costs, if you're under 65, $1 to ride the bus. If you're over 65, 50 cents. But for people traveling on the bus daily, that could be a lot of money over the course of a year. I would like to look into, and I have not been able to get the figures yet, but I would like to look into making our public transportation buses free. Get on the bus and ride. There have been times when I've wanted to go uptown and I'll just jump on the bus at the end of the street. Now I have to put my 50 cents in. It used to be $1. Get dropped off 2 blocks from Casa, walk down the 2 blocks, have a nice meal, great entertainment, and then get back on the bus and dropped off right at the end of my street. All of that for $1. For me, that's no problem. For others, it could be. I would like to see us take a serious look at no-cost bus transportation. Secondly, I think we need to modify and redo our composting program, but I'll leave that to the second question in this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, same question. How can the city reduce its carbon footprint to help decrease global warming?
We do have the fee that people voted on for on top of the price that we pay for our electricity from our aggregate electricity provider. That produces money for us to be able to get solar into city areas and city facilities. We are in the planning stage of putting a large array at one of our city buildings. So that's one, and it's a very large array, hopefully, that if it works out. So you have those sort of things. We have ways to limit our impact. Like when we did our water treatment plant, we went to using UV light instead of chlorine. So that reduced a lot of the associated impacts and carbon footprint. The city still has their emergency resolution, a climate emergency resolution, and that has been used to do several things, such as updating our solar trespassing rules in the zoning and those sort of things. And also that was the climate resolution, emergency resolution, was so unusual and such a leadership role that the United Nations Climate Office wanted to ask us questions about it. So those sort of things can also lead to other groups and other cities being able to reduce their climate, that makes us even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, this next one is for you. Would you be willing to commit to working toward a single-use plastics ban in Athens City? How important do you think this is to the health of our community? And would you be willing to explore a legal challenge to the state ban on local bans of single-use plastics? The ban.
Ban the ban. That's called preemption. The state likes preempting our ability to do home rule. And if you've watched council in the last 3 or 4 years, you would know about that. That ban is only a temporary ban on the bans. However, I wouldn't be surprised if they upped it. I think that I would suggest that we need to get our own house in order. So I would push the city to do like plastic free by 23 and be zero waste by 2030. And that's totally doable with the systems that we have. It will create jobs in our community. It will help reduce the amount of money that we spend in those sort of things. And it will help to reduce the carbon footprint at the same time. And so you can do that. And that's dealing with city processes, city procurement, what people do at the different facilities, especially the community center, and being able maybe to use certain pots of money to make it so that you don't have to use certain things at the community center because it's provided and it's not plastic. So it's beyond just a single-use plastic bag. We are inundated by plastic, and we need to really look at source reduction, getting our house in order, and then working together as a community to go that next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan.
Absolutely. In fact, we should have had it 3 years ago had we not had a flawed policy put together first. When you attach a fee to something like that, whether it's a measly dime or $1, there's automatic pushback. People view it as a tax, and largely people don't like to be taxed. But I would support that. And I think we need to be a leader in this. As for legal action, bring it on. There comes a point in time where we need to stand on our own 2 feet, quit talking about the future and talk about now. The Kroger company in 2025 is going to be plastic bag free across the nation. Kroger's is the largest grocery chain in the United States, the second largest one in the world. Why wait for somebody else to be a leader? It's time that we can be that leader. But Chris is right. It's just not the plastic bags, but it's the containers. Go to Aldi, go to Kroger, go to Walmart, try to buy some raspberries in the wintertime, and they come in a plastic container. When we recycle every week, the majority of our recyclables are those plastic containers. Without a doubt, let's do it, and let's do it now.
Thank you. The last question on the environment, and this starts with you, Alan, as the first to answer. Are there any other specific actions you recommend City Council take relative to this issue of the environment and climate change?
2, and I said I would come back to this, composting. Originally, City Council had planned to make the composting fee, not composting itself, the composting fee mandatory. Far East Side Neighborhood Association Executive Board got together, put together a proposal, lobbied hard, and got that changed from a mandatory fee to an opt-out program. As of right now, according to figures that I got from the Assistant Service Safety Director, of roughly 46,000 households in Athens or properties, 4,600, 1,200 or 27% are composting. Why aren't they composting? Cost is one. Way we can deal with cost and help reduce their carbon footprint, set up possibly some regional composting centers like they have in South Portland, Maine, where for no cost at all, you can take your compost, dump it, and go home. That would help reduce some of the carbon the carbon footprint. The second part of the answer, I have to admit, I forgot the rest of the question.
It was really just are there any other policies that you would want to implement?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Figure out a way to use the Hocking River as a recreational resource and a recreational source so that people aren't getting in their cars and driving to Logan and other places like that for things such as kayaking, canoeing, where we could do it right here and work out of the old Little Red Schoolhouse.
Thank you. Chris.
There are some canoe spots. They're just further down on the other side of like Menards. Well, I think that there's a lot of stuff that can happen environmentally. I think it needs to be a broad, cohesive view. And I think that's why the climate emergency provides a very good structure to be able to hang on a multitude of ideas that we can do. I think that Athens has already shown that we're very progressive and very creative when it comes to things such as our fee on our electric bills. That has been used as an example nationwide of what a community can do to really reduce the carbon footprint. I think that having more facilities to enable people to bike and walk safely throughout the city, and that might be also with the bus system too. We've expanded the bus system, and that helps reduce the amount of carbon coming in. But it also enables people who are that need to come in to Athens to be able to do all the things they need to do. That helps reduce carbon, and it also gets people affordable way to get into Athens. And so it's more working on the processes and the programs that we have now and doing it completely from a climate change point of view. Thank you.
We are nearing the end of our time for this forum. For me, it has sped by. I don't know how it's been for the two of you, but we have time for one more question before we move to closing statements. And Chris, we will start with you. What might City Council do better to prepare for future pandemics or to prepare for a long-term continuation of the current pandemic?
Well, first, I think that everybody in the audience and everybody who's listening and should all say, you're amazing, because our community has been really, really amazing. You can be a part of the solution or part of the problem, as the saying goes. And we've seen the people in our community just rise up when they needed to and be a true cohesive community. The city can continue working with community to make sure that we have resilience among our different facilities, but also resilience among the people, to build community, to be inclusive, and to have to make sure that everybody and every voice can be heard, and to be able to also hear the people who aren't necessarily very good at having their voices heard. And I think that those sort of things would bring in more people, build community, because when you have community, you have a lot more opportunity to take care of each other. I think that the issue always will be the students, because they may be educated for the next year, but we're always getting new crops. And so that's a continuing sort of thing. But students get it too. And we haven't had the fests sprout up as we are now. So the communication is there, and we should just look at what works and continue what works and fix the stuff that doesn't work.
Thank you, Chris. Alan, what might City Council do better to prepare for future pandemics or to prepare for a long-term continuation of the current pandemic?
The better job we can do of making Athens a place that people want to come would be very, very, very important. And by that, I mean this. We have healthcare here, but it needs to be expanded. Oblenis, Ohio Health just hired our first pulmonologist. Ironically, in this time of COVID, where pulmonology and the understanding of it and the ability to administer it are so important. We were fortunate that we did not have masses of people that had to be transported out of Athens for acute care related to COVID. But with this pulmonologist now in town, we can handle some of those more difficult medical situations. So making Athens a place where people want to come and have a full range of services, particularly in the healthcare industry, is very, very important. A second thing that the pandemic laid bare is the great disparity we have here in Athens in terms of economic situation and support structures. Many people, the vast majority of people associated with Ohio University, were able to work from the comfort of their own home, while those less fortunate, those in the service industry, were having to go to work and search for childcare and all of that. Safety nets for those most in need would be something that council and the city could look into providing. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to closing statements. Each of you will have 2 minutes for your final remarks, and we will begin with Chris.
Thank you. I must admit, I don't like really forums like stuff, and it always makes me really nervous, but I very much appreciate Tanya and your ability to be gracious and very comforting. And Alan, too, for all the great ideas and interesting things that you've said, because you have a unique point of view, and I very much appreciate it. I think that I hope that people look at me as somebody who has a lot of experience to help the community and the city of Athens go forward in the really challenging time that we will have recovering from pandemic. And that will mean that we need to build community, we need to build resilience, and we need to look at and make our carbon footprint as small as possible. And those sort of things will make our city a sustainable, inclusive, just city. We are a welcoming city. We have a welcoming resolution that welcomes people who have asylum needs and other needs. I was very happy to provide a letter for somebody who will now be coming to Athens. Those are the things that I want people to see, because those are the things that make government of the people, and it makes it approachable for everybody in the city. And I want to have people think of that as a way of getting involved in our government and in our democracy, and to see somebody who's gotten a lot done over the last few years and wants to continue working for the people on making their voices heard and doing the good things and looking at that comprehensive plan, because I can't say it enough, and going forward to do the work of the people. And I would very much appreciate your vote on May 4th or before. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan, your closing statement.
I too would like to thank the league and particularly Tanya for this. And also I'd like to thank the voters. I guarantee you this probably wasn't as exciting as watching the Bobcats Saturday night or Monday night, but this is just as important, if not more so, because this is engagement in your community. I'd like to thank Chris, not only for being here this evening and answering the questions candidly and in great detail, but for 12 years of service on council. That was quite a commitment. And the residents of the area should be thankful for that. How do I sum up? I'm just going to read you a very, very brief statement. Some of the things I'll do is I will work for safe streets and neighborhoods and affordable quality housing, which we've talked about at length tonight. I'll commit to creating an environment that welcomes the creation of growth of sustainable local businesses. And we've talked about diversifying our economy. I'll promote a diverse community that ensures racial equity, and practices social justice. We didn't get to talk about that all that much, but I will commit to those things. And I promise to spend your tax dollars in a fiscally responsible manner on only necessary projects and programs. In other words, I'm going to get out and about. I'm going to meet you. I'm going to listen to you. And I'm going to talk not to you, but talk with you. If this sounds like the kind of things that are important to you and the issues that are important to you, I'm asking for your vote starting April the 6th, all the way through the election day of May the 4th. Thank you for attending tonight. Stay safe.
I would like to close the forum by thanking both of you for participating in our democratic process. I would also like to extend an enormous thank you to the City of Athens Government Channel and Ryan Schwartzoff for partnering with us. They provided the Zoom technology, the recording and distribution of the forum across multiple platforms, and the technological expertise to make this all happen. This recording will be viewable on the City of Athens' YouTube channel, as well as its Facebook page. It's also available on the League of Women Voters of Athens County Facebook page and will be replayed on the government channel 1024. And finally, I want to thank the people of Athens County for submitting so many thoughtful questions. I wish we could have gotten to more of them. And for tuning in tonight and in the future to learn more about these candidates. We urge you all to make a voting plan now. You have until April 5th to register to vote in this primary. As the candidates both said, early in-person voting begins April 6th, and primary election day is May 4th. And as Adrienne pointed out in the beginning, all of the Fourth Ward residents will be voting up at the Board of Elections on Court Street this year for the primary.